Hi everyone, it's me, Arden Lee. I am back with another video, and today we're going to talk about how do we process anger and rage in a healthy way. This is going to be an exciting one for me to dive into because it was just about 6 to 8 months ago that I really dove into this process, and so I'm excited to share in a video what I've learned from that. This is another question that comes from a member in the repatterning parlor, and I'm excited to dive in. Before I get into that, I also want to remind everyone that I am enrolling for the winter 2020 session of the repatterning project. That is the full 8-week container, the step-by-step process of repatterning your trauma imprints, your social conditioning, all the unconscious beliefs, habits, and patterns that are forming your everyday mindsets and decisions and creating your reality in front of you. How can you take back that power so you can create your reality from a place of sovereignty, from a place of consciousness, so you can make the life that you really love instead of one that you feel kind of stuck in? So definitely reach out to me with a PM or leave a comment on the video if that's something that you're interested in, and we'll hop on a call and figure out if this is the right time for you to undertake this work. All right, so let's talk about anger and how to healthfully process it. This has been a challenge for me because I grew up with a very angry father, and I learned to associate anger with evil, right? Anger and rage with badness, right? Because I knew that my father was allowing his anger to cause him harm. And so for years and years and years, I wouldn't even say I avoided my own anger. Like, I just didn't allow myself to even feel it, right? For me, it would come across as sadness. It would come across as like, why does this always happen to me? Like frustration but it didn't feel like anger. And I got to a point in my own healing journey where I realized that anger is, like any emotion, a useful source of information. If it's coming up and I'm having a feeling, then there's something there for me to learn from it, right? And that repressing my anger, even so deeply unconsciously that I didn't know I was repressing it, was not helpful for me. I went through a couple months this past spring where I was dealing with a lot of anger and a lot of powerlessness. And I hated it. I was like, this is awful. This is so bad, and I hate feeling stuck like this. So let's talk about how to healthfully process and learn from that anger and hopefully make adjustments. I'm going to first talk about how to not healthfully process your anger, right? The unhealthy way of dealing with anger is the model where we blame everything on our external circumstances, and we continue to feed that anger, and we begin to create a pattern where we become so identified with our anger that it's almost like we're, like law of attraction wise, like confirmation bias wise, we are picking up more and more easily on the things that anger us, and we're unconsciously using those stimuli that we sort of cherry pick out of our vast field of data that we walk around and see and interact with every day. And we're unconsciously cherry picking those things that continue to make us angry. That's like someone like my dad happens, right? Super angry, starts to identify his consciousness with anger, and then gets angry at everything, right? Even when it's not even warranted, and uses that as a means to lash out at those around him as a misguided means of control, right? We don't want to end up like that, obviously. That's a cycle of anger. However, we don't want to do what I was doing either and completely bypass our anger, because what that does is, if we suppress our anger, we don't allow ourselves to acknowledge the fact that we're feeling angry about things that are happening to us, or injustice that's going on in the world, or whatever it is that's causing that feeling, then we can't learn from it and we can't make a change. So, how do we process our anger in a healthy manner? One of the reasons that so many people avoid processing their anger in a healthy manner is that if we're adults, our anger often comes back to ourselves. This is a tough reality to embrace. And I also want to be careful to discuss this with sufficient nuance, because it's also not about victim blaming, right? It's not our fault if something happened to us. However, what is true is that the powerlessness that we experience in our childhoods up until about age 18 is something that gets hardwired into us. Because we legally cannot leave our parental situations until the age of 18, we're essentially spending the most formative, the most neurologically formative years of our lives creating a pattern where if we don't like what's happening, we have to suck it up and somehow make adjustments in order to survive. This is how people pleasing happens, right? Well, if I'm nicer to my parents, if I get better grades, then maybe they won't yell at me or whatever. This is how, essentially editing ourselves down or doing whatever coping mechanisms we end up doing in that sort of bid for survival in a circumstance that we are powerless to change. That's where a lot of those patterns get set. And then when we're adults, we move on. We have a lot more freedom than we ever did as children. We have the freedom to come and go from our relationships. We have the freedom to choose where we live. We have the freedom to, to a certain extent, to choose our jobs, our fields of industry. We're in some economic pressure, so I want to make the disclaimer also that it's not always easy to come and go from our relationships if we're financially dependent. It's not always easy to come and go from our jobs if we're also financially dependent. Part of what I teach in the Repatterning Project is income instinct, so we can start to open up our field of vision to other places that we might receive that money that we're dependent on that are not going to come from a source that's essentially being harmful to us, right? So we acknowledge that there are problems, that not everything is so easy, that we don't always have the freedom that everyone is spouting about, and we also say maybe we actually do have a little more freedom than we think we do. We just have to we have to acknowledge that it's difficult, but we also have to not let that daunt us, and we have to start thinking outside the box and taking back that power if we want to be able to leave those situations eventually, right? Hopefully I covered that topic with enough nuance and subtlety that makes sense. I'm not interested in victim blaming anyone in a way that makes anyone feel bad. I'm also not interested in enabling stories of victimization and feeling trapped when that's not the full truth, right? I want to hold space for people to acknowledge how difficult it can be to leave situations sometimes, and also at the same time to say, but you can still do it, and I'd rather support you in figuring out how to do it than lose that at the expense of then lose that in favor of simply acknowledging how hard something is, right? So again, nuance, that's super important. So when we notice that a situation is causing us anger, one of the things that makes it so difficult to process and understand it in a healthy manner is that oftentimes it really comes down to us and our choices and what brought us here in the first place. I can be really angry at my partner, but I chose that person, right? Every day that I stay with them, I'm choosing them. I can be angry at my boss. I don't have a boss, right? My boss is God. My boss is spirit. My boss is my higher self. But let's say I did have a boss. I could be really angry at them, but at the same time, I'm choosing to show up to work every day, and I'm choosing the way that I navigate my relationship with them. And maybe it's not fair. Maybe they are a really horrible person. And maybe the economy is also not fair, and the economy is keeping me in this job that I really hate. But am I going to feed that anger, or am I going to sit with it and learn from it and take responsibility for my half? I hate even saying that, like, I'm going to take responsibility for, because it's been thrown around the sort of like new age and like spiritual consciousness communities as a way of really bypassing a lot of harm. But ultimately, we do have to take responsibility for our part in the decision, right? So when I feel a lot of anger about something, I allow myself to feel it. Sometimes I get creative with it. I let it all out in a really angry song verse, Although I'm careful, of course, about what I put into song and lyric, because I also know that even by putting something into rhyme, I'm amplifying it, right? That's a little witchy, it's a little woo for those of you out there. That spells done in rhyme work 9 times 9, and I have seen that to be true. So I'm careful about that. I'm careful about how I frame it. And I make sure that I'm not just creating something that's going to keep me in that loop. But if I need to purge, if I need some catharsis, then yeah, I will deal with that. I will process it in that manner. If it's just about feeling things in your body, having a somatic release, then yes, dance around, shake it out, go to a kickboxing class, right? Do the things that move those emotions out of your body. But ultimately, the way that we process and learn from it is to say, what about the situation is making me angry, and what can I do to change it? In the situation that I was angry with, I had a friendship that I was really attached to, and I didn't want to walk away from it. I was angry. I'm still angry, honestly. I was angry that this person put me in a situation where I had to make a choice between their friendship and living in alignment with my principles. It got to a point where, I've said this in videos before, but it's really weird being the creator of the Repatterning Project, because it's been a giant hypersigil that has really invited me, but it really, sometimes it doesn't feel like a choice if I'm living in alignment, to be in alignment with the values that I'm teaching. And it's like, how am I supposed to teach people if I'm still going to give my energy to a connection that is causing so many bad feelings in me? And I really did not want to walk away from it. But in the end, I was like, wow, I don't want to keep feeling this way. Why am I still holding on to this situation if it's making me feel so shit about myself, frankly? What does that say about me? And everything in my body wanted to be like, no, it's this person's fault. But sure, absolutely, yes, but I'm the one who's choosing to be in this situation. I'm the one who's choosing to allow this connection to keep messing with me and messing with my emotions. So after we've processed the immediate anger from our bodies, whether that's by writing it out, putting it into a song, going to a kickboxing class, moving that energy through, shaking it out, we really want to ask ourselves, what is this anger telling me about what I'm choosing? And am I as powerless as I was when I was 12? Or do I actually have the choice to walk away from something that is making me feel this bad? And that's hard, you guys. Especially it's going to be released after this video is going to be released in January. But, as I'm filming now, we're coming up on the holidays, and, people have all kinds of stuff come up with that, with their families and everything. And it's hard. It is tough, you guys. Because sometimes we feel anger at people that we feel like we're so attached to that we can't distance ourselves. I'm a big favor of distancing if it is for our mental health. If it is for the peace that comes with not having to live in the energy of our anger, constantly being stoked. What can I choose to not have this situation that is making me angry keep happening? Am I really stuck in it? What are my options? And if I'm choosing not to walk away for what's maybe a good reason, maybe it's that the holidays are super important to my partner, and I know that my partner's parents are going to piss me off, but I'm choosing to spend the holidays there anyway because my partner is important to me, right? Then we can deal with that and say, well, I have a choice in this matter. I'm going to choose not to let this, I'm choosing to be here. I'm choosing to be in support of my partner, and I'm not going to let these things mess with my emotions because I know it's going to be over soon and it's okay. But if anger keeps happening, then we really want to look at it and examine it. There's a saying that I keep coming back to. I don't remember where it originated, but the saying is, the amount of our growth is directly proportionate to the amount of uncomfortable truths we are able to handle about ourselves. And that's what's so difficult about anger, is realizing that in about 95% of situations that make us angry, we have a hand in choosing them. Sucks, right? You mean we're actually responsible for creating our lives through our choices and our decisions? Yes. And if you feel stuck and if you feel trapped, I understand. Okay, what are you doing to make progress to get out of that situation and start creating something different? When you start doing that, it's going to get easier because you're going to feel more empowered. There was a study done where there was a loud buzzing sound in the room, and people had to take, like tests or solve puzzles or whatever with this loud buzzing noise breaking their concentration. One room of people, that was just it. And then the other room of people, there was a button, and the facilitator said, look, if at any point the noise really gets too bad, you can press this button and it'll stop. The people who had the button did 5 times better on the puzzles than the people who didn't have the button. That's not the surprising part. The surprising part is that none of the other people in the room pushed the button. They just knew that they could. So what that says is that when we take back power and control over our lives and know that that we are capable of taking action to make a change, and that we're choosing our situations based on our values, and that if we are choosing something that does make us angry, that we're choosing it for a good reason and that it's worth the anger. And that if it's not something that's worth it, that we're able to step away and we're able to examine, why am I choosing this person? Why am I choosing to keep this relationship? Why am I choosing this situation? Every day that we hold, you guys, is a day that we buy in, right? Every day that we hold on to our stocks, our relationship or situational stocks, is a day that we buy in. I was told that about 10 years ago by an actual stockbroker, and that stayed with me ever since. Every day that we don't sell is a day that we buy in. So that's what I have to say about anger. Anger is a useful emotion because it tells us where the edge of our boundaries is. And the angrier we get, the farther we are from our boundary, right? The more that boundary has been pushed. And that's always useful information to us. So it's time to sit and examine that, right? It's hard because it involves taking a degree of self-responsibility. And often it's so much easier to say, that person's awful, this person is terrible, I'm being mistreated. Yes, okay, yes. All of that can be true. I'm certain, right? I've experienced that myself. And for some reason we are choosing to hold. Is it a good enough reason that we're choosing to hold? Are we investing in our future by dealing with present discomfort? Maybe we're going to stay in our job 3 more months so we can save up money to then be able to take time off to find a new job or to start our own business or whatever. So we're going to deal with the anger of that boss for another 3 months, right? Okay, fine, that's worth it. We're holding for a reason. But if underneath it we're not really holding for a reason, or we're holding for a reason of attachment or past feelings or nostalgia that just aren't serving us anymore, then we want to look at that too and realize that we're making those choices. This is a pretty heady way to process anger. I'm pretty sure that a somatic therapist would have more tips and tricks for dancing around and releasing from the body. But I like to think of our emotions as teachers. All of those other things are also very useful. But underneath what I want to know is, why is this happening? What change do I have to make? Why am I feeling this way? Is it just a passing thing? It's just, the moon's in a weird phase and I'm feeling touchy today and whatever? Maybe. But if it's consistent and it keeps happening, then I want to look at that. I want to understand how I can make a change. So I appreciate this question. This was another really great opportunity to dive deep. I appreciate that. I hope that this was helpful. And again, if this is work that you're interested in doing in a deep and thorough container, please reach out to me. I would love to talk to you about getting you into the Winter 2020 session of the Repatterning Project, where we can address deep core issues like this and really look at making long-standing, sustainable changes to the way that we deal with our lives. And that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this is a long one, so thank you. If you stuck in with it, appreciate you. See you next time.